How do you lead in an environment where decisions happen in milliseconds, a single mistake can cost millions of dollars, and the difference between winning and losing is measured in hundredths of a second? In 2013, Toto Wolff took over a Mercedes Formula One team that hadn't won a championship in decades. The paddock was skeptical. Here was an investor and a former racing driver with no experience leading a major F1 operation, walking into one of the most technologically complex and high-pressure environments in all of sports. 11 years later, Mercedes had won 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships, dominated nearly 70% of all races during their peak run, and become arguably the most successful team in Formula One history. And here's what makes Wolff's story fascinating for business leaders. He didn't win by out-engineering the competition. He won by out-leading them. Welcome to The Highest Level. I'm Coach Evan, and today we're breaking down Toto Wolff's leadership model, the philosophy, the culture, and the people-first principles that built a dynasty in the most technologically advanced sport on the planet. Let's dive in. First, let's understand what Toto Wolff achieved. Formula One is the most prestigious motor racing competition on the planet. Every season, 10 teams compete in over 20 races across 5 continents. Each team employs hundreds of engineers, mechanics, and specialists working on cars that cost $150 million. The margins in F1 are almost incomprehensibly small. Races are often decided by tenths of a second. A pit stop that takes 2.5 seconds instead of 2 seconds can mean the difference between a championship and second place. And here's what makes sustained success nearly impossible. The sport's governing body constantly is changing the regulations specifically designed to prevent any team from dominating. Every advantage you create gets regulated away. Yet, under Wolff's leadership, Mercedes won 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships from 2014 to 2021. They won nearly 70% of all Grand Prix races during that period. It's one of the greatest winning streaks in the history of professional sports. Wolff's leadership of Mercedes is incredibly relevant to leaders today because he runs an organization of approximately 2,000 people, full of world-class engineers, data scientists, and mechanics. These are some of the most brilliant technical minds on the planet. And Wolff's secret weapon? It wasn't better technology or bigger budgets. It was something his competitors consistently undervalued. He said it best, "I don't run racing cars. I run people that run racing cars." In an industry obsessed with engineering and data, Wolff built his competitive advantage on something everyone else ignored, the soft factors, the human elements, and the culture. This isn't just about sports. This is about the leadership challenge facing every executive in a technical, data-driven industry. How do you lead brilliant people who think success is all about metrics and systems? How do you build a culture when everyone around you dismisses soft skills as irrelevant? Wolff mastered this through a people-first leadership principle, a systematic approach to building championship culture in high-performance environments that we can break down into 5 core principles. The Toto Wolff leadership model. Principle 1. Standards through details. Toto Wolff is a self-admitted stickler for the smallest details, not in a micromanaging way, but in a cultural way. He understands that the small things signal big attitudes. On Wolff's first day at Mercedes in 2013, he walked into the team's factory in England and sat down in the reception area. On the table were a crumpled newspaper from the previous week and 2 old paper coffee cups. He later recalled, quote, "I went up to the office to meet with the team principal I would come to replace. And at the end of our conversation, I said, I look forward to working together, but there's just one thing. That reception area doesn't say F1. The principal responded, "It's the engineering that makes us win." Wolff replied, "No, it's the attitude. It all starts with an attention to detail." And Wolff didn't let this go. When he visited the bathroom in the team's hospitality area at races, he found them dirty. He didn't yell or throw a fit. He addressed it directly by hiring a full-time hygiene manager and personally training him on exactly how he wanted things done. The level of detail was insane. Wolff physically showed this new hygiene manager how to put the brush back, how to wipe the floor, how to put the soap bottles with the front facing forward, how to sanitize the handles. He walked him through the weekly schedule, when it should be cleaned, how it should look on race days, where he should position himself to make sure the bathroom was spotless after every guest. But to Wolff, he's not micromanaging toilets. He's setting the highest possible standards throughout the organization. His message is clear. No job is too small, even for the highest ranking executive, and every single team member plays a part in Mercedes' performance. Wolff explained all these soft factors that many will ignore because it's not the apex, it's not the aerodynamics, it's not vehicular dynamics, it's not anything that makes a car faster, but all of that is part of the values of a team. And if everyone is moving in the same direction, if everyone knows that attention to detail is important, then eventually the wheel is going to gain some momentum. Wolff understood that culture is built through 1,000 small signals that you send every day about what matters. The tactical takeaway: identify the reception area in your organization, the small, visible details that signal your standards to everyone. Then obsess over them. Not because the details themselves matter, but because they communicate what excellence looks like at every level. Wolff understood that if your reception area doesn't reflect championship standards, neither does anything else. The key takeaway: small details signal organizational attitude. Principle 2: people over processes. In the world of Formula One, where everything is measured, Wolff made a counterintuitive bet. He focused on the things that couldn't be measured. Explaining Mercedes' success, Wolff said, "What is the differentiator? 100% it's people, because people make processes. When you speak about the team or the company, you need to speak about everyone on the team, adding their part to the team's success." At the start of his second season at Mercedes, Wolff organized an offsite with nearly 24 members of his leadership team. The agenda wasn't about car development or race strategy. It was entirely focused on what he called the human side of the organization. They discussed their vision for the team. They identified the core values they wanted to emphasize. They outlined their ambitions, not in terms of championships, but in terms of who they wanted to become as a group. When asked about the most important values they identified, Wolff listed integrity, loyalty, respect for the individual, attention to detail, fanatical obsession with what you do. What made Mercedes different? They didn't just put these values on a poster. They built systems around them. Every year, Mercedes' leadership team asks employees to self-assess their performance against the team's values, not just their technical output. One Mercedes executive explained why this matters. This is a business dominated by engineers. It's easy to feel pressure as a principal if you don't understand the technical details, like when something is wrong with the car during a race weekend. Wolff, who doesn't have an engineering background, turned this potential weakness into a strength. He said, "I don't know as much about aerodynamics as others do, but what I do know about them as people, and I enjoy spending time with them, which makes it easier to figure out the best course of action in tough situations." Now, why does this matter for your leadership? Most leaders in technical environments feel pressure to be the smartest person in the room. Wolff leaned into the opposite. He became the most people-focused person in the room. The tactical takeaway: build evaluation systems that measure values, not just metrics. Create forums where your leadership team discusses the human side of your organization, not just the business side. Invest time in understanding your people, not just as functions. This is what separates Wolff from other F1 team principals. He understood that in a sport where everyone has access to similar technology and talent, culture becomes the competitive advantage. The key takeaway: culture is built through people, not processes. Principle 3: no blame culture with brutal honesty. This is where Wolff's leadership gets sophisticated. He created an environment of radical honesty, but without the blame that usually accompanies it. Mercedes lives by a simple mantra: see it, say it, fix it. Here's what this looks like in practice. When something fails, Wolff calls it tough love or brutal honesty. He tells the truth, even if it's not what people want to hear. But the key is that he focuses on the problem, never the person. After the race, when a journalist tried to blame the mechanic, Wolff responded by making sure that the mechanic and everyone else in the garage and back at the factory, that he had the mechanic's back. Wolff said, quote, "I was sending a message that I'm protecting the team. I'm there to protect my tribe, and I will fight back with all I have. I want my people to be able to say I made a mistake, and for us to move on from that." In their regular operations, Mercedes holds debrief meetings after every race weekend, win or lose, conducted in exactly the same manner. The focus is always on what can be improved for the next time. Wolff noted, "After a win, most people go home and say, that was a good weekend. They don't go home and say, why did we win? It's only when they lose that they start digging deep. But we have an ethos that we're upset about the small things we do wrong, and so we treat wins the same way we treat losses." The tactical takeaway: have leaders own their mistakes first. Create psychological safety for your people by modeling that mistakes are about process improvement, not personal failure. And when things go wrong publicly, protect your people publicly. This is exactly what builds trust in high-pressure environments. When people know they can admit mistakes without career consequences, they speak up faster, problems get solved quicker, and the whole organization improves. The key takeaway: blame the problem, never the person. Principle 4. Trust superstars, maintain authority. One of the most challenging aspects of Wolff's job is managing elite drivers. These guys are global celebrities with massive egos, intense media scrutiny, and the pressure of being only as good as their last race. Lewis Hamilton alone is a 7-time world champion with over 100 career victories. But Wolff's approach isn't about control. It's about mutual respect through accommodation. Describing his relationship with Hamilton, Wolff said, "We have a pact. The idea is you perform and I create the framework for you that allows you to perform. He knows what's good for him, and I trust him on that." During the 2018 season, Hamilton wanted to take 10 days away from the team to promote his own fashion collection with Tommy Hilfiger at a show in Shanghai, New York, and London, before eventually joining Mercedes for a race in Singapore. Many team principals would have said no. The optics alone, your star driver at fashion shows instead of preparing for a race, would make most executives uncomfortable. Wolff allowed it. He recalled, quote, "Lots of people were in disbelief that I allowed him to do so, but he said, trust me." His performance that weekend was from another world. He delivered one of the best qualifying laps we've ever seen and then drove away from the field at the start of the race. But here's where Wolff's model gets nuanced. Accommodation doesn't mean anything goes. When drivers cross the line from self-expression to behavior that damages the team, Wolff acts decisively. The clearest example came at the 2016 Barcelona Grand Prix. Mercedes drivers Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg were competing for the championship, but they crashed into each other on the first lap, taking both cars out of the race. Each driver had prioritized beating his teammate over protecting the team's points. Wolff's response was immediate and forceful. "I felt that they were opportunistic, putting their own objectives before the team objectives. They did not respect that there were thousands of people who worked for them. I demanded that both drivers come out to the space where all the engineers were. I told them, look at everybody here in the room. Imagine everybody back at home and their families and realize how you are making us look. I used some harsh words, and I saw engineers looking at the floor and the drivers looking at the floor. I said, the next time you want to drive each other off the road, think about all the faces in this room. Then you will think twice." He added, "I would not hesitate to take them out of the car. I said, don't challenge me on this. You don't want to find out what I'm capable of." Managing elite talent is a balance. Too much control crushes their creativity and motivation. Too much freedom leads to behavior that damages the team. The tactical takeaway: create frameworks that give your top performers space to be themselves, but establish non-negotiable boundaries around team-first behavior. And when those boundaries are crossed, act immediately and decisively in front of everyone. This is how you maintain authority without micromanaging. by being accommodating on everything except the things that truly matter. The key takeaway: give superstars the space to be themselves, but establish clear boundaries for team behavior. Principle 5. Battle complacency relentlessly. Wolff's greatest fear isn't losing. It's the complacency that comes from winning. He said, quote, "I cannot stand the humiliation we would face. I just can't take losing against somebody." You must never, ever believe that the winning will continue. On the contrary, I always worry that it could end, that this is the cliff and I'm staring at the abyss. This might sound like paranoia, but it's actually a systematic approach to fighting the psychology of success. Here's how Wolff describes the challenge. Quote, "If you have won several times, like Mercedes has, you become the one thing being chased. You are no longer the hunter, you are the prey. But you want to keep the hunter mentality alive and not letting anyone around you get complacent either." But Wolff doesn't just react to external threats. He proactively builds anti-complacency into Mercedes culture through two specific practices. First, they analyze wins as intensely as losses. Wins don't happen by accident or miracles. Wolff wants the team to understand the contributing factors that led to success. Wolff explained, quote, "If you don't understand what is happening on a good day, you surely won't understand what is happening on a bad day." Second, he encourages every team member to study the competition obsessively. Ahead of the 2021 season, Wolff sent an email out to the entire organization pointing out that Mercedes was significantly underperforming in preseason testing. And he wanted each person to take the time to find out who their opposite person was at Red Bull so they knew whom to beat. Whatever department, whatever the role, Wolff brought everyone's focus on making a difference against their primary competition. And that focus paid off as Mercedes won their 8th consecutive Constructors' World Championship. While most would tend to ease up in light of success, Wolff builds systems that force his team to stay hungry even when they're dominant. The tactical takeaway: build competitive intelligence into everyone's job, not just executives. Create rituals that analyze success as rigorously as failure, and find ways to keep your team feeling like hunters even when they're the ones being hunted. This is how you create sustained excellence, by having the discipline to fight complacency when every other instinct tells you to relax and enjoy the win. The key takeaway: spend more time analyzing why you won than celebrating that you won. Now here's how all these principles work together in practice. Look at Mercedes' run from 2014 to 2021. 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships. This is people-first leadership creating sustained excellence in the most technologically advanced sport on the planet. You had standards through details. Wolff established that no detail was too small to matter. From the reception area to the bathroom, every element of the organization reflected championship standards. It was about signaling that excellence is expected everywhere. You had people over processes. In an industry dominated by engineers who thought success came from better aerodynamics, Wolff invested in the human side. Leadership focused on values. Employee evaluations measured cultural fit alongside technical performance, and the result was a team where the most brilliant technical minds were also aligned around shared principles. You had a no-blame culture. When the 36-hour pit stop happened in Monaco, Wolff protected his mechanic publicly. When leaders came into Monday debriefs, they shared their own mistakes first. This created an environment where problems were surfaced quickly and solved collaboratively, rather than hidden until they became catastrophic. You had trusting superstars while maintaining authority. Hamilton got the freedom to attend fashion shows and pursue outside interests, but when Hamilton and Rosberg crashed into each other in Barcelona, Wolff used harsh words and clear consequences. The balance allowed elite talent to thrive while maintaining team-first culture. And you had battling complacency. Even while winning championships, Wolff analyzed victories as intensely as defeats. He plastered competitor celebrations on factory walls, and he required every team member to know their counterpart at rival teams by name and face. Notice the integration. The attention to detail creates standards everyone can see. The focus on people builds trust that enables honest feedback. The no-blame culture creates psychological safety that prevents talent from hiding mistakes. The balance of trust and authority keeps superstars productive without damaging the team culture. And the relentless focus on complacency prevents success from breeding failure. This is the difference between good technical organizations and legendary ones. They don't just optimize processes, they optimize people. And they understand that in high-pressure environments where everyone has access to similar technology and talent, culture becomes the ultimate competitive advantage. So there you have it. Toto Wolff's leadership model broken down into 5 people-first principles: standards through details, people over processes, no-blame culture with brutal honesty, trust superstars while maintaining authority, and battle complacency relentlessly. The bottom line, Wolff didn't win 8 consecutive championships by out-engineering the competition. He won by understanding something his rivals consistently undervalued, that in high-performance environments, the soft factors are actually the hard factors. The culture is the competitive advantage. The people are the process. If you found this valuable, subscribe for more championship leadership case studies. Next week, we're breaking down Jurgen Klopp and how he transformed Liverpool by turning doubters into believers through emotional connection and relentless intensity. And if you're a business leader who wants to build people-first culture in a high-performance environment like Wolff did, check out the link in the description. I work with executives who want to turn technical organizations into championship teams. Until next time, lead like a legend.